Dude! This may very well be the single biggest, most extensive mod in video game history. It's time to try out Project M. So, going into making this video, I was both extremely excited and overwhelmingly sad at the same time. If you've seen our What is Forgotten Games video, then you know that one of the rules we go by for this channel is that when we are making a video about a fan project, we only cover those ones that have either been declared finished or have been abandoned by their original core developers. We do this both to protect the fans who work on these projects, but also to protect IP owners, who are legally required to stop derivative and unofficial works if they know about them. I always figured that our stance on this issue meant I would never be able to make a video about this game. I feel really excited to finally be able to cover it, and I've enjoyed every second of putting this video together. But on the other hand, I still kind of wish I wasn't able to, because I always thought that Project M would just keep going forever. On the one hand, Project M is the single biggest and most complex fan project I've ever come across. The community support for it is so large, dedicated, and passionate that they have the sheer numbers to intimidate Nintendo itself into what many assume is a sort of grudging respect. Project M is one of the things that inspired me to start this channel. It is nothing short of a living symbol to me, a perfect example of what a group of dedicated fans can accomplish entirely on their own, and a testament to the kind of underestimated power that gamers are capable of showing. It is a beautiful and wonderful piece of work, and I am absolutely giddy to be able to review it for you now. On the other hand, this is also a bittersweet moment, since I know that the people who are most responsible for bringing us this masterpiece, the core developers who spent so much time and worked so hard to create this intricate and engaging experience, at great personal sacrifice, have decided to end their work on the project. This is the last and final version of Project M that we will likely ever play, and it is up to us to decide from this moment going forward whether it lives on in legend and endures forever, or withers away into obscurity. I hope that whether you are a longtime player of Project M or a newcomer just being introduced to it, that you can find this video enjoyable, as I want it to be both a useful introduction to the game, as well as a loving tribute to its quality and the dedication and passion of its community. So for those of you who don't know, Project M is a fan-made modification patch for Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Nintendo Wii that aims to change the fundamental design of the game to make it, in essence, play more similarly to its previous incarnation, Smash Bros. Melee for the GameCube. In the words of its developers, it was, quote, designed to add rich, technical gameplay to a balanced cast of characters, while additionally enhancing the speed of play. It doesn't stop there though. It is actually intended to improve on both Melee and Brawl's original formula in order to create a true sequel to Melee in every respect. It does this by loading up via an exploit in the game's custom stage editor, and as a result, one of the great things about it is that you do not need to modify your Wii in any way in order to play it. There are a large number of people who consider Melee to be the pinnacle of the series' design. It was a massive technical improvement over the original Smash Bros., both in terms of visual quality and the depth of its gameplay, and it perfectly personified the easy-to-learn, hard-to-master style of game. Anyone in the world could pick up a GameCube controller, and in 5 minutes they could be smashing away with their friends. The game's mechanics were so intuitive they barely needed to be explained at all. But while anyone could pick up a controller and play, very few had the time and skill necessary to master the game's more advanced mechanics. And soon after the game's release, a dedicated community of hardcore players began to form, all dedicated to the mastery of skills like teching, wave dashing, L canceling, dash dancing, and spiking. Melee's influence is so strong that even to this day, 15 years and 2 whole console generations later, there is still a national level tournament circuit for Melee players, where hundreds of people show up for the chance to win thousands of dollars in prize money. Hell, to this day, they are still discovering new mechanics built into the game. In short, there can be no denying that Smash Bros. Melee was, and is, nothing short of a masterpiece. And then Brawl happened. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Smash Bros. Brawl for the Wii is not a bad game. It's not. It gets a lot of flack for being different from Melee in a lot of ways, but it is not a bad game. What it is is a less technical, more beginner-friendly game with a greater amount of random elements introduced into the core gameplay system and with some of the game's more advanced maneuvers removed in order to better help less skilled players keep up with experienced ones. In essence, you could easily say that Brawl is the Mario Kart of the Smash Bros. Franchise. It's a very fun, over-the-top party game that you can pull out to play with just about any crowd and still have a good time, even if no one else in the room has ever played before. And while in general the more skilled players will tend to win more, the game's random elements will ensure that even those who have just started can still have fun, get in a few hits, and even have a chance of winning occasionally. That is actually a really good idea for a game, because as a fighting game franchise, you really don't want to get so advanced and technical that you fall into the trap where only your hardcore player base is willing to dive in and learn the mechanics. You need to still be able to attract new players. However, the decision to design the game this way, not to mention the decision to remove some of the characters from the previous game, did not go over well with the hardcore crowd that had formed around Melee, and many refused to seriously get into it. The Smash community became split over the issue, with many hardcore gamers boycotting Brawl entirely. On the one hand, Brawl had a number of new characters that were intriguing and unique, as well as new stages and gameplay mechanics, most notably the inclusion of the final Smash, which were very attractive. On the other hand, it was a simpler game, which most of the serious players mastered in just a few weeks. And once you reached that point, there wasn't anything more for you to practice or strive for. More than that, there were serious balance issues between the characters, with some of them being way more strategically valuable than others, regardless of the situation. Meta Knight in particular was almost universally reviled as being systematically broken and tactically unfair in any fight that he was in. All of these elements together ended up putting a limit on how good you could get at the game, no matter how much you practiced. Now again, none of this made Brawl a bad game in the universal sense. In fact, a little bit of deliberate unbalance is often a good design choice if your goal is to attract new players to your game. You can check out Extra Credits' video about the Mario Kart Blue Shell to see more about this idea. But it did mean that Brawl was a very bad game for players who wanted a tightly balanced, highly competitive experience. For a time, it began to seem like the Smash Bros. Community would be destined to go the way of the Sonic community, forever at war with itself over what it wanted. But then, on February 7th, 2011, something happened that would change the Smash Bros. Community forever. Project M Demo version 1.0 officially launched, and the Pro Smash community would never be the same again. So, there's really only so much that I can say about Project M's aesthetic design and visuals. As a mod for Brawl, it uses Brawl's engine to render all of its graphics, and therefore it basically looks about as good as Brawl does. I will say this, however, while the overall graphical fidelity of the game has not changed, there are a number of purely aesthetic design choices that the team made that I feel significantly improve the game's experience. Firstly, many of the new stages that they put in look absolutely fantastic, with a level of detail to them that possibly surpasses even that of the original stages. There's also the occasional small visual detail that they changed about the normal characters that is pretty cool, like how Ike's flames are now blue-colored, which is awesome for helping to make him visually distinctive from any of the other flame-using characters in the game. And finally, many if not all of the characters have been given additional new costumes to play with, some of them being as simple as having new color sets, while in other cases they actually have a completely different costume layout. For example, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf all have access to their original costume designs from Melee. Pikachu has new hat accessories that he can don, including Ash Ketchum's hat from the anime, and Marth and Ike both have access to their class upgraded costumes from their home games, including multiple color options for each. Now, none of this actually changes the gameplay all that much, but it certainly is a really nice touch that helps to set it apart from Brawl. Also, these are just the big ones that I've noticed. There are plenty more besides just these, so be sure to check it out and find out for yourself. Now here is where we get into the meat of what makes Project M what it is. Project M's mechanics are so heavily altered from its original source that it's hard to even identify the pieces of the original game underneath all of the changes. There isn't a single character in the roster that hasn't been at least moderately retouched, if not completely retooled from the ground up. The most sweeping changes to the game have been done to the core combat system itself. Tripping is gone entirely. Most all of the characters have been sped up in general, and a number of high-level mechanics have been reintroduced back into the game's core engine. Most notably directional air dodging, which opens the door for the ability to air dodge into the ground just after jumping to make your character slide along the surface of the arena, a maneuver colloquially known as a wave dash. There's also other advanced maneuvers that do things like let you cancel your landing lag after an attack with a well-timed shield button press, or gain control of where your character flies when you're hit by a strong attack to some extent. They also added a new item, the Turbo, which gives any character that picks it up the ability to cancel any of their attacks into any other attack, as long as they can continue to successfully connect with them. In the hands of an experienced player, this can lead to some truly spectacular and mind-boggling sequences, although usually not quite as ridiculous as this video sequence. I'm pretty sure that this is computer controlled. I'm not going to go over all of the changes made to the characters because honestly we'd be here all day, but I'll go ahead and cover some of the major ones. Roy and Mewtwo are back, complete with their original movesets plus a few minor upgrades, and they've each been given their own final smash. Pokemon Trainer is gone, and his 3 Pokemon have been split into 3 completely separate characters, each with their own well-defined fighting style that has been augmented so that they are each a seriously challenging character. And again, they've all been given their own unique final smash. Lucario is completely different. He's now a short-range, combo-heavy character with moves and a cancel system reminiscent of Street Fighter. Snake has had a ton of subtle, small changes made to him that altogether add up to a much more spy-like playstyle. His best options now are to stay on the edge of the combat, lay down mines, and sneak bombs onto his enemies. Samus can now switch beam weapons with her side taunt. This changes the animation as well as the damage to knockback ratio for some of her melee attacks, as well as the effects of her missile and super missile weapons. Falco's original moveset from Melee has been completely restored. Ganondorf's Wizard Fist is now his forward smash, and in its place he now does the little cape whippy thing that he did during his final battle with Link in Ocarina of Time. Yes, this does reflect projectiles if timed correctly. It also looks cool. Bowser has had a bunch of super armor frames added to his various moves, which lets him straight up power through enemies that try to hit him out of them. This turns him into a walking, unstoppable fortress of destruction. But none of this can truly capture the essence of what makes Project M so different. It's more than that. Project M is a collection of alterations to a core idea that, taken all together, add up to something completely different from the original. Project M is its own game. It bears only a superficial similarity to Brawl, and the best way I can think of to describe it is to say that Project M is to Brawl what Majora's Mask is to Ocarina of Time. You can't really get across the experience of it simply by saying that it's a shoot-off of the original. Somehow, through all the process of trial, testing, retesting, and revising, it has become its own game with its own essence. And, if I might be forgiven for stealing a quote, no one can really be told what Project M is. You have to experience it for yourself to understand. Okay, so diving straight into Project M can possibly be a little intimidating, especially since most of the videos you see of people playing it on the internet make it look like something that you'll need to spend days and weeks practicing at before you can step into the ring. So let me give you a few pieces of advice. First, that's not how it works. You do not have to be good at Project M in order to play it. Me and most of my friends have been playing it for a few years now, and none of us are really good at it. It is totally possible to play Project M casually, and in fact, in my experience, it is still just as fun as playing Brawl, if not more so, simply because you can all know that every character has been carefully balanced, and therefore, no one is getting any major advantages because of character choice. Second, if you do want to get better at the more advanced maneuvers, but you're having trouble, I found that going back and playing some Melee was actually a very good start. Melee's battle system is very similar to Project M's, but it can be a little more forgiving when it comes to stringing attacks together or chasing after an opponent that has been knocked away. So playing it can help a lot to get a feel for the sort of frantic, fast-paced action that Project M thrives on. There's also a bunch of online resources you can check out if you want to study certain characters or maneuvers in depth. For one, IGN has a pretty nice wiki about it. There's also YouTube itself, which has a number of channels with video series about playing Project M in Melee, and what advanced maneuvers you can learn, as well as how to perform them. And finally, just to make one thing perfectly clear, some of my friends that I played this game with were a little reluctant to get into Project M because they kept hearing the word combos getting thrown around a lot. So I want to make something very clear. Combos in Project M are not like combos in other fighting game series. Other fighting games have hard combos, a specific sequence of attacks that if inputted correctly are all guaranteed to hit in sequence, and that the opponent is powerless to do anything about once the sequence has begun. Project M's combos don't work like that. With the exception of Lucario and the Turbo item, the combos in this game are soft combos. No single attack in the sequence is guaranteed to hit, because you, the defensive player, have the ability to affect your trajectory and the distance flown whenever you are struck. Thus, you always have the possibility of escaping, assuming you can outwit, confuse, or cross up your opponent. They have to chase you in order to keep hitting you, and they have to guess where you are going to go. Thus, combos in Project M are essentially a minigame in and of themselves. So don't be intimidated by it. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Project M is quite possibly the single biggest, most extensive mod in video game history. But it's more than even that. The biggest thing that I learned while working on this video is that Project M is too big for me. It's more than just a game. It's an experience. It's a community. I cannot possibly shrink down everything that Project M is into a single compressed video. I could spend all day sitting here and talking to you about it, and I still wouldn't be able to accurately encapsulate it for you. I simply am insufficient to the task of truly getting across to you the depths of what this game is and what it means to experience it. So for your own sake, I urge you and anyone else you know who's ever played a Smash game, go out and look into it. In the same way that every gamer should play at least a few minutes of Street Fighter at least once in their life, at least some Ocarina of Time, I'm telling you this, every gamer should play at least 1 or 2 matches of Project M at some point in their life. It is a technical achievement that I consider to be unrivaled by anything else the video game industry has produced, especially since the people that made it were working the entire time for free. The Project M development team may have moved on to other endeavors, but that does not mean that Project M needs to die or wither away. The people that are into this game are some of the most intensely dedicated gamers I have ever seen, and I am firmly convinced that they have the strength and perseverance needed to keep Project M alive and thriving for decades to come. I also believe that if they truly wish to dedicate themselves to the task, they can ensure that Project M lives on in infamy as one of the most important and influential games of its time, with a legacy that endures throughout entire generations of gamers. To the serious players of Project M, I say this: you have within your community the potential to see your game listed in the halls of fame, alongside the ranks of Street Fighter, Zelda, Halo, and Mario. Your community can succeed in a way that many AAA developers spend their lives trying to succeed and failing. All you have to do is not give up. Project M is one of the best games I have ever played, and I recommend that everyone try it. If you want to learn more about this game, I've included a bunch of links in the description below, including a mirror where you can download both versions of the mod you need to run the game, as well as links to several useful guide pages. The Project M dev team stripped most of their website down when they ceased development on the project, but I've included a link to a backup of the page on the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, so you can check out what it used to look like. Pretty much all of the information on it is still relevant, and much of it is useful for studying how particular characters have been changed or enhanced. If you liked this video, please feel free to check out some of my others. I don't always give reviews this glowing, but I try to be fair about the games I cover. I like reviewing interesting fan projects, mods, and fan translations, so feel free to check out anything else you like. Also, please tell your friends. We could really use the word of mouth coverage to help this channel grow. And I hope that you'll join me next time on Forgotten Games.